Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first story is titled, Entitled Woman Tries and Fails to Take My Job. So I'm an instructor at a small college. I teach artsy vocational classes and only have an MFA, and my school really favors more academic PhDs. This was all told to me when I was hired. But the dean at the time was incredibly kind about this and gave me a secret boost in pay to make up for the lack of favor. She told me that even though I would never be promoted, my area of expertise was valued, and as long as I stayed in my lane, I was very welcome. So, before I ever got my tenure, I worked for a few years and developed a slate of very popular classes that filled every semester. I was very happy and grateful to have the job. Titles mean nothing to me, and I was just happy to be successful at a job I loved that helped people. I also learned very quickly to never step on the toes of more senior faculty. I stayed in my lane. Then, a woman was hired in another subgroup of my department. I never met her, nor was I involved in her hiring. She had nothing to do with me, but she does have a PhD. Then, before I ever met her, I saw her on social media that she announced she would soon be teaching all my classes, and she was delighted to be doing that. I was shocked because I went through a rigorous hiring process, and I'm exceptionally qualified to teach in my area. She has no publications in my area, and her degrees are only vaguely related to my area. I figured my chair would put her in her place, but I was wrong. Instead, I was called into the chair's office and told EW is very interested in what you do and wants to help you. I stared my chair down. EW has a degree in X, and she was hired to do Y. That doesn't have anything to do with me. Chair size. Her degree is multidisciplinary, and she is more than qualified. This shocked me because it was way out of protocol. There was a pecking order, one that I had followed. This shocked me because I was way out of protocol. This shocked me because it was way out of protocol. There was a pecking order, one that I had followed. I also realized very quickly that if I gave in, I would have no job, and I would be shunted off to teach stuff I wasn't qualified to teach. This gave me the courage to resist, and resist I did. Multiple meetings with my chair followed, in which I was painted with the stigma of being difficult and unsupportive. Honestly, if the woman had one shred of business teaching in my area, I probably would have succumbed to the pressure. But she was not qualified either by degree, experience, or publications. That made me mad. Meanwhile, an older colleague, who had been terrible to me and made me cry a few times, pulled me aside one day. Apparently, she had grown to respect that I wasn't letting the chair bully me. She told me to never verbalize permission for EW to take over any of my classes. Apparently, the rules of the school were, and are, that I was the one who decided who could sub for me or take over for me. I held firm. I was bullied over and over again. One time, my chair very nearly physically threatened me and said, "Why can't you just say it?" Chair had no idea I had been tipped off why I needed to say it. I was told by another colleague that EW is bored with her area, and she doesn't like what she got a degree in, and she only did that area because it's easier to get hired. I said her life choices weren't my problem, and stood firm. My chair threatened not to support my tenure, but I actually had a bulletproof application. Chair couldn't do anything. Shunned by many colleagues, some of whom I thought were my friends, I was called angry and unreasonable. On a good day, a bitch on the worst. One day, the sweet dear lady who had been responsible for hiring EW actually cried an apology, saying she was sickened by what was happening to me. EW had been their last choice, and the only person they could get. This sweet, lovely woman wailed that EW was obnoxious and terrible. She also said that many people in the department supported me but were scared off the chair. She said I should just keep resisting. At least twice I was at school events, and when I told the person both times, higher-up administrators, what I taught, they said, "Oh, I thought EW did that." I had to correct them, so I got tenure and stood firm. Meanwhile, a former student who was now teaching at a community college nearby told me EW was teaching there. He provided me with her bio from their website. Her listed credentials were my credentials. Luckily, that didn't last long. She didn't have the expertise, so I guess that gig just fizzled. One thing I never did was meet with EW. I was asked to, so we could hash things out, and I said repeatedly that there was nothing to hash. I was happy in my job, and my job wasn't her job. I was always polite and professional if I had to deal with her, but I always avoided any potential traps. They wanted my verbal permission. I wouldn't give it. Finally, the chair stepped down. The next chair initially sided with the majority because he didn't know me very well, but then he got to know me and was fair. Eventually, EW stopped trying to do my job. She pushed her way into another area, and now she steers clear of mine. It really did take about 10 years to wear her down. So there was no real dramatic ending. I just held firm, and eventually EW gave up. The reason I'm sharing is recently another colleague told me that he always thought EW and the chair were having an affair, and this is why everything happened. Maybe I'm naive, but the thought never crossed my mind. Plus, EW is actually not attractive at all, so I couldn't picture it. Anyway, over the years, whenever EW has done anything terrible or stupid, my colleagues will always share it with me. Still, I actually have little ill will left for her. I won most of the battles and the war, and that's good enough. I still love my job and my students, and I'm glad I fought for it. They say academia is the Game of Thrones without the beheadings. Fair, I think. The next story is titled Private HOA Police Seized My Farm Property and Kicked Me Out. I'm not even part of the HOA. Growing up, I always heard stories about homeowners associations, HOAs, being a bit controlling, but I never thought it could get as bad as it did in my South African neighborhood. Our HOA was more like a gang, using bullying tactics and violence to coerce residents into joining. I refused to join, and for a while they left me and my farm alone. But as they got more desperate, they turned on to more aggressive tactics. The first time the HOA police showed up at my property, they turned their cars on my land and left the bright lights on, disrupting my sleep. It wasn't a fun time, but I was determined to stand my ground. I had built my farm from the ground up, and I wasn't going to let them bully me into joining an organization I didn't believe in. I tried to ignore their constant letters about owing them dues, but the harassment only escalated from there. I came home one day to find garbage dumped on my lawn, and another time I found my mailbox destroyed. They even threw eggs at my house, but I was unfazed. As a farmer, I was used to cleaning up messes, and I had plenty of eggs of my own. The most terrifying encounter I had with the HOA gang was when they showed up at my doorsteps holding cricket bats. They claimed they just wanted to talk about me joining the HOA, but I could see the intimidation in their eyes. It wasn't until I revealed my gun that they finally left, but things only got worse from there. I began to receive fines for not paying my non-existent bills, and the HOA police started showing up at all hours of the day and night. I knew I had to fight back. It took months of gathering evidence and testimonies, but I was finally able to take the HOA to court. The judge was appalled by the HOA's illegal activities, including the use of a private police force and their illegal eviction of me from my own property. The judge found the HOA guilty and ordered them to pay a heavy fine, including my house taxes and expenses for the time I was kept off my property. The HOA was also required to dissolve their private police force and were warned not to engage in any further illegal activities. I was relieved that justice was served, but it wasn't the end of my battle. The HOA was stubborn and refused to admit defeat. They began to appeal the court's decision, dragging the legal process on for months. It was a frustrating and emotionally exhausting time, but I was determined to see it through to the end. Finally, after many long months of legal battles, the HOA lost their final appeal. They were forced to pay their fines they had been avoiding, and I was awarded additional compensation for the pain and suffering they had caused me. The judge ordered the HOA to shut down entirely, and they were banned from ever forming another HOA or private police force. It was a hard-fought victory, but in the end, I had regained my farm and exposed the corrupt practices of the HOA gang. But the story doesn't end there. A few years after the legal battle, I received a call from a neighbor who had just moved into the area. They had purchased a home from one of the former HOA members and had uncovered a shocking discovery. The HOA had been stealing money from residents for years, pocketing the dues they were supposed to go towards community improvements and maintenance. The neighbor had found documents detailing the theft and embezzlement, and they were able to provide evidence that led to the arrest and conviction of the HOA's leaders. The former HOA president and several other members were found guilty of theft, fraud, and other charges related to the embezzlement of funds from residents. They were sentenced to several years in prison and ordered to pay restitution for all the homeowners who had been affected by their illegal actions. The news was a shock to the community, but it was also a relief. For years we had suspected that something was wrong with the HOA, but we never had any concrete evidence to prove it. With the help of my neighbor and the evidence they had uncovered, justice was finally served. But the story doesn't end there. After the HOA leaders were sent to prison, the community was left in disarray. But we knew that something needed to be done to ensure that the community could move forward and thrive. Together, a group of us started a new neighborhood association, one that was built on transparency and accountability. We made it our mission to ensure that every resident had a voice in the decisions that were made and that all dues were being used for the betterment of the community. It wasn't easy, but we worked hard to gain the trust of the residents and make positive changes in the neighborhood. We held regular meetings and open forums to discuss the issues that were important to the community, and we made sure that everyone had a say in the decisions that were made. Slowly but surely, the neighborhood began to flourish. The streets were cleaner, the parks were better maintained, and the sense of community was stronger than ever before. We had overcome the corruption of the past and had to build something new and better in its place. Looking back on my experience with the corrupt HOA gang, I'm proud of the fight I put up and the justice that was served. But I'm even more proud of the community that we've built since then, one that is stronger and more resilient than ever before. It's a testament to the power of people coming together to fight for what's right and make a positive difference in the world. The next story is titled Back from College Break to Have Nothing. My daughter, a 19-year-old female, had a group of high school friends for years. Fast forward freshman year college, and her new roommate becomes part of the friend group. I was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer the same day that she started classes that year. As the year goes on, her relationship with some of her friends starts to have problems, but the roommate still seems solid, so they sign a lease for sophomore year. By the beginning of sophomore year, all of her high school friends, 4, had turned on my daughter, and she's struggling to find out why. By the end of September, she finds out the roommate had been playing both sides of the fence and has ultimately sided with my daughter's old friends and continues to see them regularly. This, of course, creates a nasty living situation for my daughter, but she does her best to manage through. As time goes on, I come to find out that her friends turned on her because they felt that her emotional needs were toxic for them to be around. My daughter was having a panic attack about my cancer and other normal things and was reaching out to her friends for someone to talk to, and they couldn't handle it. A few weeks ago, the roommate invited 2 of these friends to stay over. My daughter asked that they pick another time as she had work and then a night ahead of her finishing her finals, and she didn't want to be in the apartment if they were going to be. The roommate ignored the request. My daughter walked into them being there after work and had a panic attack. The roommate looked at her and said, "See, this is why you have no friends. When you behave like this, what do you expect?" This week, my daughter managed to find a way to move out before the roommate came back from break. The couch, the coffee table, the rug, the pots and pans, the dishes, the shower curtain, and on, all of it was my daughter's. The internet, the electric, the water, all in my daughter's name. She took everything, moved out, and left the roommate to come back from break with none of it working, and all of the shared space items gone, and left her a note signed, "What did you expect?" Oh, I wish I could be a fly on the wall when she walks in. The last story is titled, "Mom Wanted to Live Off My Income Once I Graduated." Growing up, my mom had told me she was raising me to be the best child because she knew I would achieve more. My mom was way harsher on my grades, sports, academic clubs, looks, and personal life than my little brother. I admit I grew up hating my little brother for all the freedom he had, while I was always isolated. I was always grounded. I was working multiple jobs to not only save up for college, but help with my family bills. When my brother got a job, he was able to spend the money on what he wanted. My mom told me what my career goal was, what person I should marry, how she will move in with me after I buy my house to raise the children and take care of her. My mom was the type to blow money on designer stuff while we slept in hotels and cars at one point. I hated being poor. All I wanted was a house growing up. A nice small, nice house for us. If I dated someone my mom didn't approve, she would do everything to sabotage the relationship because they were not good enough for me. Well, when I got to law school and was getting my JD, when I met my now current boyfriend, you know they say when you know, you know. Gosh, did we know right away. Moved me in after 3 days and have not been away from each other since. I love his family and they also love me. He was raised upper middle class and had an amazing set of parents. He was also top of the law school and just felt too perfect for me. My mom disagreed. She didn't like him one bit because anytime she said something to make herself look smart, he called her out and said, "Nope, you're wrong." Provided facts and even showed his sources. Oh, she hates to be proven wrong. I told my boyfriend how my mom raised me and what she expects from me growing up. Well, he wasn't going to have it. He said she would be lucky to even know her grandchildren. My mom started to see her plans unraveling with my new boyfriend and tried to break us up multiple times. When she started making fun of his parents, he drew the line. He called her out and said we were done with her. The panic was real for my mom in this moment. It was her meal ticket. She demanded that I made a choice, my own mother or a man I was only dating for a year. I chose my boyfriend. We have been together for almost 3 years. I dropped from law school and work remotely at an amazing job. He graduated top of his class and was hired immediately. Our income is way above what I expected, and sometimes cry at night for how blessed I feel. Growing up, I always begged to have a home that I could call my own. Now, we may have a home together in a few years. She will send threats and make up excuses to try to contact me in order to get back in my life. We plan to get married soon and know we have to keep it really quiet because she will either call in a threat or try to show up. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.